Ryan mentioning the cat's out of the bag with MicroStrategy. My question basically is, how do both of Jeff and Ryan, how do you guys think about, it's hard to talk about MicroStrategy's future price performance without kind of going back and discussing the fundamentals of why I believe the continued appreciation of Bitcoin itself will happen, right? Fundamentally, everything it's a Bitcoin strategy. And so my question here is, how do you guys, if at all, do you think about sort of the continued adoption of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy's role for equity investors? Is it a driver of it? Is another vehicle or a catalyst to ride up these bubbles where the premium expands? And is it a further mass adoption driver? And is that even, do you guys believe that fundamentally that's going to be necessary the way that it has been so far? It's been like sort of addresses to the power of two, roughly over this point. Is that still going to matter as much going forward with a vehicle like MicroStrategy? Some people were wondering some along similar lines with the ETFs, and I think the jury's still out on that. But what do you guys think generally about that?
I think this will massively impact global adoption of Bitcoin, particularly because you have these agnostic buyers that are supporting the value of the stock, right? You've got these passive market cap weighted index funds that are supporting the value of the stock. So that's going to get people this exposure without even knowing that they have this exposure, and which is going to bring more capital into the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is going to incentivize more continued development of the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? If Bitcoin goes from 1.4 trillion market cap to 10 trillion market cap, all of a sudden there are a couple 100,000 people that have just been freed up from their existing roles and jobs and things that they're working on, and are going to start devoting their time and effort and energy into developing the Bitcoin ecosystem. You know, a lot of people talk about retiring, but I think everybody's lying, right? Like you're definitely going to want to do something. And I think a lot of people are going to want to work on Bitcoin into the future. I think,
I agree with you. It seems like the more the machine works, the more there's going to be an incentive to join. There's going to be feedback loops that build here, right? Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
And I also think about a tokenized future, which is an interesting concept. And this is already kind of happening with MicroStrategy. There's this product that's available in Europe, and it's started by Blockstream, Stoker, Adam Back's company. It's called CMSTR. And this is actually a tokenized MicroStrategy product that's tradable peer-to-peer. And I can foresee a future where you now have stocks that have utility value, like MicroStrategy, where you don't necessarily have to sell your MicroStrategy in order for it to have utility, where you can hold a product like CMSTR in a cold storage wallet and send it peer-to-peer, right? If Ryan goes and buys dinner and I want to pay him back, he accepts CMSTR from me. I could send him a couple, CMSTR pieces. It's like infinitely divisible and usable, similar to how Bitcoin is used. So I know that's a concept that a lot of people get stuck up on, is like a Bitcoin denominated future, and will MicroStrategy trade as a multiple in a Bitcoin denominated future? And I think the answer to that is absolutely. There will be other things that have value in the world aside from Bitcoin in a Bitcoin denominated future. Bitcoin will just be the measuring stick by which everything is measured. Homes, commodities, gold, oil, stocks, equities, all of those things will continue to hold value at some point in the future. It will just be measured against Bitcoin. And I think those things will be valued at multiples, because not all of those commodities are available to the market at the same time, right? People will hold homes because they have utility value. People will hold equity because they have utility value. People will hold commodity because it has utility value. And I think that's a tough concept for people to wrap their heads around. There might be 21 million Bitcoin in the world, but there might be 210 million Bitcoin worth of value in the world. And market cap itself is a synthetic concept. And I think that's hard for people to grasp.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin can easily compare, because you can with on-chain data, you can very easily look at realized cap versus market cap, and very rarely are they anywhere the same with Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is always trading, at a multiple, its own NAV from the realized like money input versus its own market cap. Like Bitcoin has its own NAV, because during right now, I think it's at 2.1. So basically the market cap of Bitcoin is trading at over a double of the actual realized dollars that have gone into Bitcoin throughout its history. And the only time it really goes back to being at neutral is at the bottoms of the bear market. It actually goes a little bit below, similar to how MicroStrategy went below its NAV. It's actually somewhat of an analogous comparison in some ways. But I guess just because today's election day, I don't know if this question, you guys can choose to answer it any way you want, but do you see any differences? I guess how do you kind of wrap your head around this kind of fork in the road, so to speak? I'm not to get political. I don't want to do that. I want to just we could talk about the bullish case. If one outcome with strategic reserves, or just that concept. We don't even have to talk about specific candidates, but just the concept of strategic reserves. If the U.S. were ever to go that direction, and how that could impact like MicroStrategy as a stock.
Go ahead, Ryan, take it.
Can I go first? And I'll start by answering the previous question, and then I'll touch on this too. And I won't share my political beliefs, just kind of knocked my fan over, just kind of the bull case, bear case, each side. So in regards to the first question, I mean, I think all the Bitcoin's gone. I feel like all of it has a future buyer, and the price today in the short term is just very meaningless. I talked about this with Tim Kotzman, but think about who the buyer would be if anyone is to sell their Bitcoin. You've got, Metaplanet buying as much as they can, Semler buying as much as they can, El Salvador aggressively buying, the ETF owners buying more shares of the ETF, which buys more Bitcoin. The candidate in Suriname, Miss Maya Prabhu, if she gets elected, she's going to be buying Bitcoin. So there's a global story here to be made about smaller entities. I shouldn't have thrown IBIT in the smaller group, but you know what I mean. And then in the big money center of the world, you've got the whole ETF complex, just net buyers for a long period of time. And then MicroStrategy came out and said, we're buying $42 billion worth of this thing over the next 36 months. And again, to Jeff's point, he brought this up earlier, that just gives everyone else the ability to front run.